We are MakilalaTV, the first Filipino-American TV talk show in the New York metro area. Get to know us as we talk to the community leaders, innovators, advocates, and emerging artists who affect Filipino-American life.
Stories of Filipinos overstaying after their visa has expired. Should we accept that this is how many of our own family and friends reached the U.S. soil to try and make the American dream? This past January, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the Department of State removed 3 countries from being eligible to receive H-2A and H-2B work visas. This was the first year since this list started in 2008 that the Philippines was removed with 2 other countries, the Dominican Republic and Ethiopia. The federal agency cites that almost 40% of Filipinos with H-2 visas do not return to the Philippines after their visa expires. Unfortunately, they also found that Filipinos with H-2 visas may be easily trafficked into dangerous and slave-like working conditions, which was the reason why they banned the workers with that visa status. There is so much to learn about this process, the implications on our community, and the future of Filipino immigration to the U.S. I, Rachelle Ocampo, am joined with my co-hosts Jen Fura and Cristina Pastor on MakilalaTV to get a better idea of how the U.S. denial of H-2 visas mean to the Fil-Am community. I am pleased to introduce a friend and advocate of the Filipino community, founding attorney Licelle Cobrador. As a leader in immigration law, Licelle represents clients from Asia, Latin America, Europe, and all 50 states. She advises clients on legal and strategic issues rising from the global movement of talents, top executives, and expert staff. Additionally, Licelle serves as the Vice President and Executive Director for the Filipino American Legal Defense and Education Fund, also known as FALDEF. She's also the co-chair of Cardozo Law's Masters Alumni Community. She was named a Time Is Now Trailblazer, featured in the Cardozo Journal of Outstanding Alumni in June 2018, Cardozo Life's Movers and Shakers in fall 2018, Women Today's Women on the Front Rank, and quoted in Mashable and published in Delaware Lawyer magazine. So Licelle, let's get right to the basics. What is the difference between H-2A and H-2B work visas, and how many Filipinos actually apply for it every year?
So the difference between H-2A and H-2B is that H-2A is agricultural workers.
Okay.
H-2B, non-agricultural workers. So I could also clarify what H-2 is.
Yeah.
Those are guest workers or temporary workers. They're part of those programs, either agricultural or non-agricultural. And the employers, recruiters would then have to warrant that there are guidelines, proper standards that will be followed in terms of their wages, their recruitment, their hiring, their conditions of work.
Okay. So, and there's all the different types of visas. There's the tourist visa, there's
Yes.
H-1 visa.
Yes.
H-1 I know is special occupation visa.
Yes.
Which is, would you say like the most common? Like what's the most common visa?
H-1B visas or the special occupation visas are the most common visas, I would say, for Filipinos.
Okay,
So that one's not banned yet.
Yeah, I
No,
was gonna say
that's not.
that's
Yeah,
not
very
in
different.
question. Okay.
And to the second point where how many Filipinos apply for H-2s, I can't really give you specific figures, but I know that there's been over 700 approved H-2s.
Okay.
767, I think, exactly. But for the applicants, we can't really keep track, except that the figures given by the Department of State was that it tripled within the last couple of years.
Wow.
Yes.
Is it easy to renew an H2 or H1 visa?
An H2 visa, you can renew that, but the requirement is the employer needs you for their program.
Okay, so
Can-
once
can
the
you-
employer,
Go ahead, Jen.
sorry, but once the employer, let's say the job is already done, then you can't go for another employer. You have to.
So then that's another employer petitioning then for you. It's a new H2.
So let's say
So
you're in a
that's
limbo
possible.
between H2 from employer 1 to employer B. You have to go home or you
Yes,
can
you just
stay?
need to get a new visa
Okay.
sponsored by that new employer.
What are the professions covered by the H2 visa?
So agricultural and non-agricultural. Agricultural, those could be people, working the farm, of course, like apple pickers, or like or harvesting different produce. That's part of the agricultural labor, and I'm not that familiar with.
What about hotel workers, hospitality
So for
workers?
non-agricultural, those are
Non-agricultural,
covered.
yeah.
Hotel workers, restaurant workers, people in construction even. So those would be covered by the non-agricultural.
So where do Filipinos go? What are the biggest
There's a lot in the
sectors? Yeah.
service industry.
We're not in the agricultural sector, right?
No, I would say there's a lot in the restaurant and hotel
That's
and
right,
management industry.
Like nurses fall under H2?
No,
Oh.
they're special occupations.
special
or
occupation.
they're green card holders.
Okay.
Wow.
So how do you, most people, they overstay because there's no option for them to renew. And going back to the Philippines seems like, the reason why you came over here is that you want to have a better job and things like that. So was it because it's difficult to renew a work visa? That's why people overstay?
I think it's largely because it's so expensive to get that type of visa. They're already on the hook for a lot of loans, I must say, just paying off the recruiter, paying off the agent, and of course they want to provide for their families, so they opt to just violate the terms of their visas. Like, unfortunately, that's what happens to the H2 visa holders who overstay.
So people who overstay, how do they become trafficked people?
Okay, so some of the H2 workers, they were promised a certain pay, they were promised certain working conditions, and they come here and they realize that it's very different. For example, there are people who would be working in those winter resorts and they would come here and the promise of the salary was like $14 an hour or $16, and only to find out it's actually just like $5, and then the living conditions are like very poor, like they're not even provided a proper room. It's a mobile home where they don't even have any heat.
Yeah.
So for those kinds of conditions, clearly it's, there's a thin line between saying this is really a contract, this person voluntarily signed up for that, and there's not much discrepancy within, like, if you compare the salaries that were promised and what was provided, but you also still need to prove that there was some kind of fraud.
Because the
You
fraud
know, so that's like-
the fraud would be the company that
Yes,
over here,
the
or is it-
company,
or
the recruiter, any of them. So for a trafficking visa, those are the elements, which, of course, if that's proven, then they're eligible for a T visa, which is the human trafficking visa.
So if they are here under those conditions, they don't want to go home. They would rather stay here and fight it in court. Is that what happens?
Oh, it's not a court procedure. That's another visa filing. So they're going to file a T visa, alleging that they're a human trafficking victim and they're eligible for that.
They go to immigration lawyers for that.
Immigration
Okay.
lawyers, there's a lot of volunteer attorneys who would help them process their trafficking visa.
So you're saying that with this 40% is like, it's mind-boggling of how many actually do overstay. Is there anything else that is preventing people from getting trafficked other than stopping this visa process?
I think it's a systemic problem. It's not just like the visa. It's like it's one of the solutions that you could see, but there's so many other problems from the Philippines, like many recruiters who are unscrupulous or employers who are actually taking advantage of those programs, and it's very hard to track. Like, who are the people responsible? And there are government agencies in the Philippines that supposedly gave clearance to these H2 workers to come here.
Right.
And so there's like so many
And I'm so glad that you mentioned
components, right?
that there are multiple factors, because another factor is, why are people leaving? You know, why is there so many people leaving the Philippines, where we see as vacation, and then they're coming here for a better life? Like, why are we having such a difficult time for people to understand that, like, we should be really fixing what's in the Philippines?
So why did we all leave? I mean,
right.
I mean, we're all here
Right,
because, for a reason, because life in the Philippines is just really
just-
tough.
So
I mean,
if
I
there's-
still have.
So if there's a lot of overstaying here and they don't want to go home, and we are among the highest nationalities together with the Ethiopians and the Dominican people, what does that say about how come there are no, again, I don't want to profile, how come there are no Latinos in this universe, this little universe? The Latinos do not resort to that kind of immigration act?
They're
something?
also in the list of the countries that allow for H2 workers. So there's a lot of countries, El Salvador, Guatemala, they're still allowed to bring forth the H2 workers in the U.S.
But,
so
but they're
they
not
get grants.
banned, they're not
They're
suspended
not
yet.
banned,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
they're not suspended. I suppose the factors then to be considered for allowing a country to be designated as an H2 country should be considered, and these factors are how many people are subject to removal, how many people have overstayed,
okay, yeah.
how many people actually benefit the U.S. interests, or is it in the U.S. interest to allow for this country to be part of that list for the H2 visas?
Yeah.
And I guess at the end, they've decided that it's not in their interest to allow for the Philippines to be part of that list. And from what I've seen, the U.S. thinks that it might be a vehicle for human trafficking, which you've already been discussing. Like, they don't want the H2 visa route to become a vehicle for this particular human trafficking problem.
But this suspension is only good for 1 year. Is that correct?
It's 1 year. I mean, next year we could be back on,
Okay.
or it could be continuous. We don't really.
Do you think that this might actually be the beginning of other denials of visas? Like, is it because this is like the U.S. punishing the Philippines? Like, is there any type of factor other than that? Because I feel like that, yes, human trafficking is bad, but is that a cover-up reason of why this visa?
I can't really speak to that. That's really.
What do you really mean?
So when people go to you and tell them, attorney, I want to overstay, what do you advise them?
This is, of course, not optimal for any person, because being undocumented in the United States wouldn't really help you or help anybody. I mean,
you wouldn't put them on retainer?
No, I can't accept them as
Thank
clients
you.
at all. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But some lawyers accept them as clients,
Yes.
right?
Well,
Jen has an experience with a whole slew of lawyers.
certainly not me. I just can't, in good conscience, do that, and it's of course not ethically.
Oh, okay.
You should accept a client who has immigration relief, someone who's eligible, qualified for a certain immigration relief, not promising the moon and the stars,
Yes.
or like, okay, you're getting a work permit, eventually there might be amnesty, but actually that person is not qualified. Why would you file a certain petition, right? I think that could be because they want some money from the client, but it's
I think
really
that's the only
not,
reason why.
it's really
Lawyers would
not
put them on retainer.
ethical, right? Yeah.
So what would you advise? I guess the only advice you could give to people whose visas are expiring is that either one, they look for another employer, or two, if they can't find one, they have to go home.
Yes.
Or they can get married. That's another common popular advice.
Yeah, but you can
Or
tell
they
them.
can,
Common
or they
popular
can enroll in a school, right? Those are the things that we hear about.
Yeah, but
So they can.
but isn't that a guaranteed thing to go?
There's some. I think there's some
different ways.
vocational schools that allow for.
So if you're here on a work
checks,
visa
yeah.
and decided to enroll, that's a lot of money to go to college.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But if they have a work, maybe they can support themselves.
Have you heard of any like stories personally that have gone through this issue of visas?
So people who are in H2s
Yeah.
and they've, yes. So there
And
are,
they went home.
There are some clients, potential clients, who have friends and they want to consult about people who've overstayed their H2
Yeah.
and actually they've been trafficked. And sometimes the lawyers take advantage of that too. Like
Yeah.
they ask a huge retainer and then suddenly you realize that the T wasn't actually filed.
Oh my
You know, like they
Oh,
actually
really?
don't have a status.
How
Or
do
are
you-
they really qualified? You know, the T visa, it's not just saying, oh, okay, I've been trafficked. Of course, there's like some evidentiary requirements you need to prove. So,
Yeah.
that's why it's really sad that some people, and of course, immigration-wise, you know, you don't need to be an attorney to file an
Yeah.
immigration
that's
petition or
Who
an
knows that?
application,
Not
right?
everyone
Everything's
knows
online.
It could be someone who's a paralegal or I'm sorry to use this term, fixer. Like they say, oh, I'll take care of it. It's okay. You'll be good. Just give me this money. Give me all your original documents. You'll be fine. But once somebody says that, that's someone to watch out for.
Is
Yeah,
that
that's
is
a
that
red
common?
flag.
Is that common
Right,
in our community? These fixers.
There are
Do we
some
have a lot of that?
there are some people who would go to these types of individuals simply because, you know, they're more affordable and maybe they've created a trust, a trust environment for those kinds of individuals and the potential clients. So they just entrust their future, their lives to those people. But sometimes they can't even find those people anymore after. Yeah. And there are even some lawyers who suddenly you realize they were already suspended or disbarred, you know?
How do you find this out? Like I'm trying to figure out how to warn the members of the community like red flags about lawyers and people who take advantage. So one is a fixer. How do you confirm that a fixer is actually a legitimate?
So if they're trying to present themselves as attorneys for a potential client, the best thing to say is, okay, let me see your roll of attorney's number.
okay,
Do
attorney
you
number.
have like
So maybe
an
that's
attorney
one thing-
ID? You can look them up, but
Okay.
you know, you can see whether or not they're part
They're
of
licensed.
They're licensed. The
Maybe
New
that's
York
one thing
bar.
FALDEF should do.
Right.
As
right.
the vice president and executive director
Right,
of FALDEF,
right.
maybe
what-
have
what-
a
Where do you
list.
check them? What roster do you
So-
verify them? How do you vet them?
So if you do a search of that person's name, there are certain websites. One is like Avo.
Oh,
You
yeah,
can
yeah,
find
I've
them
heard of
there
Avo,
if the
yeah.
lawyer's listed there, or if their account is inactive, it would just be a picture, and they would say like whether this lawyer is still active or he's renewed the registration or not, or if there are some disciplinary proceedings against this lawyer, you would see that
Wow.
there. Or
What website is that?
Avo.
Avo.
AVVO.com.
Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you tell us a little bit more about FALDEF? Do you see, like, in a leadership position, have you seen these types of really sad cases where people have been taken advantage of? Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yes, so there are cases where Filipinos on H2s have been victims of human trafficking, and a lot of nonprofit organizations also partner with FALDEF, and these organizations help them not just legally but also economically. Also, once their T visa is granted, of course there are the derivatives who can come to the United States, like their wives and their children. And with the transition from the US to here, those nonprofit organizations also help the trafficking victims, and the Philippine consulate has also helped a lot. So one of the partnerships of FALDEF is with the Philippine consulate. I would say, I would advise the people who are looking for attorneys to also get in contact with the Philippine consulate if they're familiar with the attorney that's being, vetted.
Yeah. Okay.
So TNT is still alive and well.
TNT, tago,
Tago ng tago.
tago ng tago.
There are still
there are
people
still
who
people that do
are,
it, yeah.
of course, out of status. Yes. And I'm candid enough when they approach me to say that, okay, you don't have a status, you don't have any other option. I mean, I would really say that, not like promise the moon and the stars to somebody, like I guess some other professionals, fixers, they try to do that when a person consults them. But for me, once I see that there's no other route, I would really just tell them the truth.
You will tell them,
Like, I'm sorry, you don't
you
have
to go
another alternative except to go home. Or
Is that painful to say?
very painful.
It's
Very
hard
painful.
to hear too when
Yeah,
somebody
yeah,
says
that's
that.
right, yeah.
But
Yeah.
then I would rather that they did that when we were going through the process, as opposed to, oh, maybe we could try
Yeah.
this little,
They would probably
but-
go to another lawyer where
But
they would.
do people
hear.
really go back, even after hearing that? Or do they just take the chance? Like, I feel like that not many people raise $1,000 to go take Philippine Airlines to go back to the Philippines. I mean, it's a hard decision. I think
Very
a lot
hard.
of people,
Very hard.
even if you say that you would have liked that advice,
I think
would
so
you have
too.
really
And
followed it?
having gone through all the deportations, and there are other ways for them, for us to be here, and just waited our time. I wish they would have told us, and I wish they would have told us that yes, you could be deported, as opposed to we
Yeah.
can always appeal,
Yeah,
figure
yeah,
out
that's
different
right.
ways.
Yeah.
It's probably easier for me to say that I wish, like they told us that, but I guess we have this look in our eyes, and we'll go to the lawyer. Maybe there's a little chance that
But if
you do
if they
this.
go home, is it easier for them to return?
So for people who've overstayed for 180 days, or then there would be a 3-year bar.
3
If
years.
it's been more than a year, then there's a 10-year bar.
That's what you were talking about. Yeah.
So that's the
okay.
problem.
Okay, so really be conscious of knowing when your time is up.
Right.
Because there
Right.
is a huge difference between 3 and 10 years.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, even then, it's very discretionary upon the consul interviewing you for your new visa, right?
Yeah, it's hard. to
Your
get.
immigration history, that's like a permanent stamp on you. They look it up. Everything's synced now. I mean, gone are the days where they don't have records, or you came into the country, they can't find your I-94 or things like that in the 90s.
Yeah.
Today, everything is synced. So once you apply for your new visa, they're going to see, oh, you overstayed. I mean, that's not going to
Yeah.
look that good if
Yeah.
you're
Sure.
applying for a new tourist visa. Like, really, you're just visiting this time, like that's a problem.
I feel like the general message that I'd like to convey to both our viewers and just to our community is to both be educated in what your status is, your visa is, and to learn about the resources, and also just have a sense of empathy for people that are going through this.
Yes.
Because yes, they have overstayed, but everyone has their own story and reasons of why they do things.
Yep.
That's right.
So I hate to cut it short, but we do have to end it in another minute. I'd like to ask you, Licelle, as a founding attorney at Cobrador and Associates PLLC, a New York-based, female-owned and operated law firm in New York City, what is the one piece of advice that you'd like to share with Filipinos who are questioning what they should do about their expiring or expired visa status?
The best advice I could give is that you should consult an immigration attorney. A lot of immigration attorneys give free consultations. Don't hesitate to reach out to them. Email them, call them, make an appointment. And that's the person who can tell you what you're supposed to do.
Yes, and make sure you vet them
Yes.
first.
Yes.
And also word of mouth, like try to hear about other people's
Yes.
resources that have good reputation.
Call the consulate, as you said, if you're
Ah,
still
yes.
not sure, is this lawyer good or not?
Yes. So thank you again, Licelle. You may learn more about Licelle and the services that she provides by visiting www.cobradorlaw.com. Maraming salamat to our Makilala TV team, Jen and Cristina, and of course, to all of our viewers for your continued support. Hi, my name is Rachelle Ocampo from Makilala TV, and we are featuring Makilala in Minutes. We have today Licelle Cobrador of Cobrador and Associates. So Licelle, tell us, why did you start your own firm back in 2017?
Sure. So I used to work at a boutique immigration firm in Midtown Manhattan for 7 years, and I thought it was time to blaze my own trail.
Right. Tell us a little bit about who you work with. You said and associates.
Yes, so right now I have a legal director. Her name is Mampi Gosh. She's also a woman, of course, and she speaks 5 languages, and she's helped me a lot. We also hire some contract attorneys, and we contract them out whenever I don't have time to appear for certain interviews or hearings.
Thank you.
Sure.